So how we started with the design process is that we knew we had to use voice in a meaningful way, because most games that rely on voice actually at this time are mostly annoying. I can show you an example of what we did not want to do. I don't know if you know this game, it's called Path. It's pretty good. It gets laughs, so but it's kind of, nobody's gonna play that for like more than 10 minutes, and it's fun, but it's not meaningful in any way, and it's just a gimmick in a way. So we wanted to go far from it, and especially since a constant voice input gets pretty tiring, we wanted the player to only use his voice at important times. So we did not go this way. But even before having really made a decision on the real mechanics of the game, we started with the setting. Ian came with this idea of the watery feeling of the game, that it would happen into water, and it really resonated with every one of us. But then we wanted to go further, and we thought, what if the game was happening in the water, but when you're drowning? Because we've all heard stories of people drowning and being in this like in-between world between life and death, where maybe like their life flashes before their eyes. So I don't know if you get what I mean, but this is really the setting that inspired us. It would let us create many situations in the game. Diverse from, we were pretty inspired by the possibility of having like different soundscapes from the memories of the player's past. Would it be like city soundscapes or forest or beach soundscapes? So it's really the occasion for the player to revisit while he's drowning the issues of his past, and using his voice as a tool to have a second chance and maybe solve these said issues. I don't know if my colleagues want to add to the setting inspiration.
I think it just really appealed to me to have a game where you knew you would die at the end no matter what you did.
So yeah, death.
It's a foregone conclusion, but the idea is that you're revisiting these like delirious memories and sort of bringing peace to them, so that you can die in a peaceful way rather than the thrashing, frantic way, drowning. But we were also like through the poetry and through the science, we're attracted to the idea of like euphoria through death, and the feeling of chemicals rushing into your brain as you drown from lack of oxygen.
There's AAA market game.
And the fact that we're not selling the game, stuff like that.
But it's being kept very abstract, right?
Yeah.
So all of this narrative is sort of, you know, the designer's rationale for things.
Yeah, we're using it to inspire some of the ideas, but never to sort of put that on the player. We just want to leave enough for the player to draw.
It's not going to be like, oh, you're drowning, what are you going to do?
And this made me think of this poet who's actually was in my department for many years, Robert Allen, who wrote a long poem called The Incantatas about a character who had this drowning delirium. And so a good part of the poem is really about it. And so the text that was in the teaser you saw was extracted from this poem. So although this is my projection on the game, I'm seeing this game as a kind of video game adaptation of a long poem by a Canadian poet. That's just sticking to it.
The verses in the teaser were actually from the...
But that's just me.
So what do you do with voice and sound when you're in water? Well, if you put your head in a sink and try to talk, you'll see that not much sound come out of it, but you die, but don't do it too long. But you see that there's plenty of bubbles coming out of your mouth, and that really inspired us, because when you're in water, there's bubble coming out of your mouth, and this is the tangible representation of your voice. So Jason talked about having on the iPad some object that would really reflect what your voice did. So if your voice was higher or louder or longer, if your voice input, the actual properties of your voice input had to have an influence on the game, and the properties of the bubble will reflect these different properties from your voice. So it's really a one-to-one basis that's really going to give each voice input a real meaningful impact on the game. And we also thought that, well, sound in water, how could we represent it? Well, pretty much ripples is the best way. Sound waves in the air are pretty much like ripples in the water. So it's a very intuitive way to represent sound in games, and that's what we chose. So the game is really about having bubbles interact with ripples, and after that, it's up to the player. Want to add anything? The game is going to be more about than just bubbles and ripples, but of course, it's just not just a playground. But
let me just say that they're not just sound waves. They actually like push the bubbles. So
yeah.
That's about as far as we go with the metaphor.
Yeah, but let's say it says like. So after we decided to go with that, we took a look at few games. These are not really our inspiration, but we kind of look at them to see what they did good, what they did wrong. So Flow, Osmose, Limbo for this ethereal feeling, and Aquaria for, of course, moving underwater.
We actually specifically chose Aquaria as a thing not to emulate.
Yes.
Especially the iPad version of it
yeah.
for the control. Not that it is a bad game. So after that, after having made these decisions, we really worked into like figuring out basics of the game, the interactions between each element, the overall progression of the game. So it's going to be a game with many levels in it, but we didn't know what was the end date of the game. So we figured that there'd be some levels and that we could add more levels as we go further into development. And there's going to be an overworld through which the players will be able to access each levels after playing them the first time. And then we did some of the dirty work, so we drew on the whiteboards to kind of figure out what we should do. Because at the beginning it was a platform game, but as we move into the organic process of designing the game, it became an action platform puzzle game. So we kind of started designing some puzzle. So you can see here, if I play the video, you can see that we have the ripples interaction in mind for designing the puzzle, because when ripples interact with each other, they can negate themselves. So that would lend the passage to whatever you wanted to pass between the ripples. So it's with only the bubbles and the ripples, we've created like this rich playground to play with. We haven't got, because we're so early in the development of the game still, we haven't got really the chance to play with these toys, but we are pretty confident that these toys are fun. But still, this is a question. Is this design fun? Because right now, we didn't have the occasion to really play with it, because the development team has been working very hard on actually making the bubbles and the ripples, but we haven't got the occasion to actually do some playtesting and see where we go from here. So for us, the design team, and for everyone, it's really the next step, is to see, is it fun first, and how can we make it better, and how will this be implemented in the real game with actual levels, with actual game design, so that the player learns how each element interacts with each other through the game, and challenge him until the end.